Hello friends. Today let us learn that how can Vladimir Putin can remain president until 2036. It's the latest Indian Express report. Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, has run the country for more than 20 years, which is the longest time a leader has been in power since Soviet authoritarian leader Joseph Stalin. On Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed the legislation that may be able to keep him in power till 2036, when he will be 83 years old. Putin, a former KGB officer who is now 68, completes his ongoing 6-year tenure of his fourth as president in 2024. He has already run the country either as president or as prime minister for more than 20 years. This is the longest period a leader has been in power since Joseph Stalin, who was Secretary General of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the Premier of Soviet Union from 1941 to 1953. So what's the change? Before the new legislation was signed, a president could serve a maximum of 2 consecutive 6-year terms. That term limit remains even in the new legislation. What has changed is that Putin's previous terms will not be counted once the new legislation comes into effect. These will be zeroed out, giving him the option of serving 2 more consecutive terms after the current one ends in 2024. Putin has remained in power for so long in spite of the limit of 2 consecutive terms because he has altered his roles as president and prime minister. At the end of his first 2 consecutive terms as president in 2008, Putin stepped down to become prime minister while the president's chair went to chosen successor Dmitry Medvedev. Until then, the term of the Russian president was for 4 years. Putin has served in the chair from 2000 to 2008. Also in 2008, the president's term was lengthened to 6 years, which is why Putin's current 2 successive terms run for 12 years from 2012 to 2024. How it was changed? The legislation Putin has now signed formalizes changes to the Russian constitution that were endorsed by the people through a referendum held last year. The changes he proposed were approved by over 78% of the vote. So in January 2020, he called for changes to the constitution, which included the removal of term limits. In a speech to the State Duma, Russia's lower house of parliament, in March 2020, Putin cited the example of US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who served 4 terms starting 1932, 1936, 1940 and 1944. Roosevelt's 4-year presidency paved the way for the 22nd Amendment to the US Constitution, ratified in 1951, that limited the presidential term to 4-year terms. In his speech, Putin said Roosevelt had to serve 4 terms because of the problems the US was facing at that time, Great Depression and World War II, and that therefore putting limits on presidential terms was something superfluous. In conditions where a country is experiencing such a shocks and difficulties, of course stability is perhaps more important and must be a priority. The amendments in Russia were passed by the lower house of parliament in March last year, and criticism follows as well. Some critics have likened Putin's move to a power grab, while others have called them a constitutional coup. Golos Russian association that carries out independent election observations called the July vote a PR campaign, the purpose of which was not to reveal the free will of citizens but to form the necessary perception of this will by the authorities. Thank you.